After the JFK Records Act was passed by Congress in 1992, it instructed federal agencies to search for assassination records and to either submit them directly to the National Archives immediately, if they were willing to release them in full, or to sequester those documents, to set them aside for later review by the Assassination Records Review Board if those agencies did not want the documents released. So agencies had to search for records, they had to set them aside. If they didn't want them released, they had to give them to the archives if they were willing to release them in full. Furthermore, the National Archives briefed all federal agencies on the requirements of the JFK Records Act before the review board came into existence. So all of these agencies were instructed that you will not destroy any JFK assassination records. If you don't think they're important, if you want to destroy them, you're not allowed to do so. You would have to ask the review board's permission. Well, the review board's formation was delayed a little bit by the presidential election in 1992. The first President Bush, who had lost the presidential election to Bill Clinton in 1992, had in his possession the 5 names that had been nominated by professional societies to be the 5 board members of the ARRB. He decided to withhold those names from Bill Clinton and not share them with him. So as a result, after Bill Clinton took office, those people had to be renominated by the professional societies that named them. And then Bill Clinton and Al Gore, who had been very busy during their first 100 days with new activities, new legislation, had put the review board business on the back burner initially. So eventually, the Clinton administration found the time to forward the 5 nominations to the Senate for its advice and consent. Eventually, the Senate did confirm the 5 names nominated. The Clinton administration provided seed money that the review board used initially to begin hiring staff. So the review board officially began its activities on October 1st, 1994. And during the first year of its existence, proceeded to construct an office within an office building in downtown DC and to hire staff members. Hiring staff members was a very time-consuming evolution. It took a lot of time. So midway through this first year of activity, the head of research analysis for the ARRB, Jeremy Gunn, began to draw up a list of documents that the review board wanted from each major federal agency, documents that we wanted them to search for, documents the review board wanted to examine. About January of 1995, the review board staff made its requirements known to the Secret Service. And one of the categories of records they wanted to see were the protective survey reports on the protection of President Kennedy. Well, as it turned out, the survey reports for a specific period, September through November of 1963, were not forthcoming from the Secret Service record holders. For about 6 months, the Secret Service officials in charge of these records conducted stalling actions and provided various excuses for why they couldn't find these records. After 6 months of persistent inquiry by Jeremy Gunn and Dr. Joan Zimmerman, the Secret Service finally admitted that the protective survey reports from September through November of 1963 had been destroyed by them in January of 1995. They had conducted their destruction of these records after being told by the National Archives that it was illegal to do so, and they conducted their destruction of these records at the same time that the review board staff was holding internal discussions about which records to request of the Secret Service. The implications are very disturbing. Included in the records destroyed by the Secret Service were protective survey reports for President Kennedy's trips to Miami and to Chicago in November of 1963. Now we know today, because of an undercover police sting conducted by the Miami police at the time, we know today that there was an assassination plot in the works in Miami. And it didn't come down. It didn't take place in November of 1963, but that's probably why President Kennedy's motorcade was canceled and he flew by helicopter instead to a speaking site. We also know today that there was an assassination plot in the works in the city of Chicago in November of 1963. And probably the only reason that that plot was not executed is because President Kennedy's trip was canceled literally at the last minute. It was canceled that morning. The reasons for the cancellation are unclear. It might have been related to the plot. It might have been related to the crisis in Vietnam caused by the coup in Vietnam overthrowing President Diem. But at any rate, those protective survey reports for that time period could have provided valuable information to the review board and to the American people about the Miami and Chicago assassination plots.